She said to move the screen. You're going to talk that way?
Yeah, I'm going to talk this way. Okay, just because.
That's you don't want my germs.
No, I don't want to get sick if you're contagious. Okay.
Okay, we are recording.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm calling the regular meeting of the Town Board of Trustees to order. It's Monday, October 8th, 2018. It's 6:11. May I have roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Palazuski.
Here.
Trustee Adams.
Here.
Trustee Babcock.
Here.
Trustee Broadhead.
Here.
Trustee Harris.
Here.
Trustee Hatch.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, today is Monday, October 8th, 2018, and you do have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is a request to accept the consent agenda.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to pull out resolution or consent agenda item D, please.
And that is Resolution 83R 2018 will be removed from the consent agenda. We are now approving the minutes of 9/24, age receivable, and Mead Police Department report and Will County Sheriff report. May I have a motion?
And E.
Oh, I'm sorry.
84R.
And E, which is Resolution 84R 2018, a resolution by the Town of Mead appointing a Chief of Police. May I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda will be the item that was removed, which is Resolution Number 83R 2018, a resolution of the Town of Mead, Colorado, accepting an annexation petition, making certain findings, finding substantial compliance for such petition, and setting a public hearing for property known as Highlands Annexation. Mr. Kennedy?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for coming to the podium. And Ms. Trustee Babcock?
I would just like to clarify exactly what this resolution is. I've had some questions from the public, and I thought I'd pull it out so that we're all clear on it.
It's a procedural issue required by state law that you're basically just making a determination of substantial compliance with state law. Basically says that the petition was submitted and it meets all the requirements and it's in the right format as required by state law. It's signed by 100% of the property owners representing 100% of the land in question, but it does not mean that you're approving the item at all. It just allows us to move forward with additional review, and then it sets the public hearing date.
And are we setting the public hearing for the November 13th? Is that what, sorry, not to throw this at you last minute.
That is
but,
correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
That's part of the finding.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any other questions? May I have a motion to accept Resolution 84R? I'm sorry, 83R 2018.
I move to approve resolution number 83R 2018, a resolution of the Town of Mead, Colorado, accepting an annexation petition, making certain findings of fact, finding substantial compliance for such petition, and setting a public hearing for property known as the Highlands Annexation. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Trustee Adams for the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a motion to approve the bills list.
I move that we approve the bills list.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. May we have roll call, please?
Trustee Babcock.
Yes.
Trustee Adams.
Yes.
Trustee Harris.
Yes.
Trustee Broadhead.
Yes.
Trustee Hatch.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Telezewski.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is audience participation. This is a portion of the meeting where the public may comment upon or ask questions about topics not on the agenda. The public will be recognized and allowed to speak about issues listed on the agenda during the time they are discussed by the board, subject to reasonable time limitation and decorum. Please come to the podium, state your name, address for the benefit of the audience and public record when you begin to speak. Is there anyone here for audience participation?
Bridget Rodriguez, 2751 Bridal Drive, Liberty Ranch, Mead. I hope you all had a chance to read my email from last week. I also sent you one back in June. I was told that I should have brought my concerns to a board meeting, so here I am. A brief background. My husband Chris and I, along with our family, previously lived in Longmont for 13 years. We both have a background in election campaigns and campaign finance. I had election judge training with Boulder County. We both went through training and were certified by the state of Colorado to do voter registration. We both ran a nonpartisan Get Out the Vote project. We both worked on former Secretary of State Scott Gessler's campaign. My husband was a plaintiff in a successful Fair Campaign Practices lawsuit filed by Scott Gessler on behalf of former elected officials and citizens against the city of Longmont. And we have worked directly on city council campaigns. We are knowledgeable about the election process. We moved to Mead 5 years ago with no intention of getting directly involved in local politics again. We followed Mead's election last April from the sidelines and didn't endorse anyone back then, even though we were asked to. We have concerns about the mayoral election. The outcome of this current election could possibly result in yet another board vacancy. Mead voters should be made aware prior to this election that the outcome of this election could either result in yet another election at a cost of up to $5,500 or be filled by an appointment. An appointment is not a minor thing either, as there are members of the board that are still here after being originally seated by appointment. Based on public comment since our mayor resigned, having a choice and voting was important to Mead voters. I read this quote recently from a Mead voter that was posted on the Town of Mead Facebook page after the last election, which said, "It feels like I cast my vote without being made aware of all the facts. I might have voted differently." You need to publicly give Mead voters an accurate cost and details of the entire election picture. I've watched the process since June that included discussion of election finances and procedures and haven't seen that done. I'd also like to ask each of you to state your opinion about how you would proceed should Mead have to spend up to $5,500 to hold yet another election, should a trustee be elected mayor, or would you vote to appoint to fill a possible trustee vacancy? Do you already have someone in mind for that vacancy? If so, voters should know that information prior to this election. Transparency matters to the voters of Mead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor Pro Tem, if I may, I'd like to, thank Ms. Rodriguez for making the comments, and I think that she validly does have a question about, well, what will happen if there's another vacancy? But I would point out that the vacancy does not yet exist, and we won't know if there's a vacancy on the board until we know the results of the mayoral election. And even though she asks each of you to state an opinion on how you think you should go about filling that vacancy, I think that would be improper at the current time. State law does make it very clear that if a vacancy occurs, and we went through this back when the mayor resigned, but if there is a vacancy on the board, you have two options. You can appoint an individual to fill that vacancy, or you can order a special election. and allow the voters of the town of Mead to make a decision in terms of who they want to fill that vacancy. If you fail to take either one of those two actions within 60 days from the date that the vacancy occurs, then you're required by state law to hold a special election. So what I would advise you to do is hold off and wait to see what happens at the election in November, because either you're going to have a vacancy or you're not. And at that time, when you know whether or not there's a vacancy, then we can have a discussion about what is in the best interest of the town. Should there be an appointment to fill that vacancy, or should there be another special election? But I think any discussion of that at this point would be premature. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. McCass. Are there any questions or concerns from the board at this point? Is there anyone that would like to participate in audience participation at this point?
Bethany Ainsworth, 325 6th Street, Mead, Colorado. I guess at this point I feel like every member of this community is privileged to the same information. I don't think that there's a surprise coming. I think anyone that's interested in this election, anyone that's interested in our town, and anyone that's been following this turn of events would know that if there is a vacancy, there will either be an election or an appointment. I don't know that I feel like, I don't know that we need to be worried to take a measure that we have to alert the community. I feel like responsible, involved citizens should already know.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to participate in audience participation? Seeing no one come to the podium, we are going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to review and approve the agenda. And Mrs. Strutt?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Palazuski and Board of Trustees, I apologize, under informational items, under the committee's reports, this is their quarterly committee reports. We actually have 3 committees, and one is not listed there. The Parks, Recreation Facilities, and Open Space Committee. So I would ask that you add them to the agenda as item 8C.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion?
Yeah, I motion that we add to the information items, Parks and Recreation Facilities and Open Space.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. The next item on the next item that we will be removing from the agenda is the work session Board of Conduct. Code of Conduct was going to be at the end of the meeting. We had time at the beginning of this meeting. We had half an hour. We squeezed it in. We got our homework. And so it is off the agenda. So our work session is off of it. And that is it for the changes on the agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
May I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is public hearing Red Barn annexation and zoning. And I am opening up for a public hearing at this time at 6:25. And I'm asking our town planning consultant, Mrs. Vecchi, to come to the podium.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the board, good evening. I'll be presenting the agenda item summary and reviewing that with you. I'll be giving you an overview of that, but I'd like to start with a very brief background and a little bit of context in terms of the location of this the property. It's located in the East Side neighborhood, and what I'd like to mention to you that is back in 2014, the town of Firestone initiated a large annexation of about 1,300 acres on the southeast side of Mead's growth boundary, and that's what's referred to as the East Side neighborhood. And it's called Barefoot Lakes to this day, but in 2014 it was initiated. The town of Mead actually initiated a lawsuit, and then there was a settlement with Firestone about how far north they would actually continue to go. Well, I'd like to take just a minute and go through, at that time, the town settled with Firestone and began a planning process in the East Side neighborhood. So this property is located in that East Side neighborhood, and very quickly I'm going to go through and just give you a little background about that. So on the screen there's the urban growth boundary for the town of Mead. That's what you're seeing on the screen initially. And then what's referred to as the East Side neighborhood goes up north of County Road 34, over east to the St. Vrain Creek and to the south as well, and then I-25 on the west. So this, the area that's coming in yellow, is the approximately 1,300 acres of the Firestone annexation, just so you know where it's located. It's south of Highway 66 and west of County Road 13. But it does abut existing town limits south of Highway 66. So at that time, the town board initiated a major outreach to the landowners. And this particular slide, all of those little parcels there show ownership of land. There's large ownerships, and most of those show the pretty large ownerships of the property there. But the town reached out to the landowners there, and the property that's involved this evening was part of those conversations back then. So this is Barefoot Lakes. This is just a summary. It's 1,306 acres. It's proposed for 5,031 residential units. And it's a combination of residential, commercial, mixed use, open space, and public uses. And I think a lot of you are familiar with that. And it's already under construction. The first phase started in the south, and it will be ultimately coming all the way up to County Road or Highway 66. And with that, Firestone's master plan. And this is their, I believe they had it. This was their 2013, and I believe this is still current. You'll see that the very top edge there of their planning area goes all the way up beyond County Road 34 also. So there's overlap. That's what I wanted to show you is just give you that background. So this is an important property this evening that you're going to be considering for annexation, and these were just parts of I just wanted to show you for the yellow, basically. I'm going to slip right through these. Oops. There's a slight delay. So what happened here is there were a series of workshops that the landowners all participated in, as well as board members and planning commission members, and they hosted. And so what you're seeing is part of, this was one of the work sessions, and so these are some of the graphics that were done. And out of that came some planning, which was prior to the comprehensive plan for this East Side neighborhood, and a lot of that was actually integrated into the comprehensive plan. So with that, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background and then start in on the Red Barn annexation. This is a request this evening to approve the Red Barn annexation and also to assign the zoning for the property of
You're done.
Can you stop that? Okay. The assignment of zoning, RSF 4 and RSF estate zoning. And the owners of the property, of which the primary owner is represented this evening, it is 13-32 Development LLC, and Andrew Batson is in the audience this evening, is going to be available for questions. As well as Andrew Batson and the 1332 Development, Craig Kay and Audrey Koppel are also applicants, as well as Jason and Brandy Lyon. And the property is located on the southwest corner of County Road 13 and 32. It's 202 acres, and it is just south of Lake Thomas Reservoir there. It's currently zoned agricultural in Weld County, and to the south is unincorporated Weld County still, and to the east, Grandview Estates provides contiguity for this property to be annexed. And with that, the proposal this evening, it's a series of 4 annexations, beginning with the contiguity on Grandview Estates. And there are 2 large lots on the property. Currently, they were developed in Weld County, and they will be zoned RSF Estate. And the intent is to plat 13 additional perimeter large lots around the property, and internally to have approximately 445 single-family homes interior to the subdivision. There is a concept plan in your information this evening. The project has been proposed as an innovative urban agricultural project with residential development and small-scale urban farming gardens. There is proposed a community activity center and the potential ultimately for possibly some limited commercial uses. And I'm going to, so this evening, the annexation eligibility review criteria is the first measure of annexation. And it is that the requirements for contiguity must be met. So for all 4 of these annexations, the contiguity of the 1/6 perimeter has been met. There's a table in your packet that indicates how that has been met. The second criteria is that there's a community of interest between the area proposed to be annexed and the urban area within the town of Mead, and the contiguity requirement satisfies that condition as well, and that has been met. The next is that it talks about no identical ownerships, and that this particular condition is met in that 100% of the ownership is petitioning to annex. And this item D, the boundaries of the territory to be annexed are not held in identical ownership. Again, all 100% of the owners are participating in the application. So that condition is met as well, the criteria. This again speaks to no annexation proceedings have been commenced by another municipality for this property, and that criteria has been met. The area proposed for annexation, item F, will not result in the detachment of area from any school district or the attachment of same to another school district. There is a correction in the memo. It does refer to the subject property remaining in, it's the St. Vrain Valley School District, and that should be corrected. The annexation of the property will not have the effect of extending the municipal boundary more than 3 miles in any direction, and that also has been met. Item number 2, an election is not required under this section. And because 100% of the ownership is being represented, that criteria is also met. Item number 3, the petition is found to be signed by 100% of the owners, and that also has been met. It's in your packet, the petition. No additional terms and conditions are imposed, and that criterion has also been met. Now, the next action that you'll be taking this evening is regarding the zoning, and there's also criteria for the zoning. The establishment of the initial zoning is subject to review against the following criteria. However, only one of the criteria must be met for the proposed zoning to be approved. The first of which is to correct a manifest error in an ordinance establishing the zoning, and that is not applicable. The second is to rezone an area or extend the boundary of an existing district because of changed or changing conditions in a particular area or in the town generally. This criteria is met for rezoning. When the property is annexed, the jurisdiction will change from Weld County Agricultural to the Residential Single Family 4 and Residential Single Family Estate. The Planning Commission did consider this at a public hearing, the annexation and zoning, and recommended approval of the RSF 4 and RSFE zoning districts as specified. There is a zoning map in your packet. The next is items 3, 4, 5, and 6 in terms of criteria they are not applicable. So finally, in terms of legal considerations, the petition has been submitted. The public hearings were set in compliance, consistent with the substantial compliance hearing. And tonight's October 8th public hearing falls within the time frame requirements. At the public hearing that the Planning Commission held, I would like to mention that we did have a number of people attend the meeting, and the people that did speak that evening were from the Western Sugar Co-op, which owns property directly to the east of this annexation. They expressed their intention to continue an active agricultural operation and their concern for any current or future landowners that might purchase in the area to be aware of what their operations are, and in particularly certain times of the year in terms of the noise, traffic, hours of operation, and lighting that may be a nuisance to them. And it's particularly during those peak seasons. So after that hearing, Andrew Batson did initiate a solution to that in terms of providing a disclosure notice against the subject property and a reference to that in the annexation agreement. And he and his attorney have both provided that to be integrated into this application this evening. In accordance with sections...
Jennifer, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but it might be a good opportunity for the board to understand that the applicant's proposed solution to addressing the property immediately to the east, which is owned by the Western Sugar Cooperative, was to include a notice that would be recorded against the entirety of the property, so that any future owner, when he or she or they go to purchase a lot within the development, they would be made aware that there is an agricultural operation immediately to the east. And just for the benefit of the record, and I think for some of those in the audience, because I think we probably have some of the growers that are here tonight, I'll just read a portion of that notice, just so that you understand what it says. So the part of the notice states that the property is located immediately west of certain property owned by the Western Sugar Cooperative, a Colorado cooperative involved in sugar beet production. Sugar beet production is a small part of Colorado's agricultural economy, but in the 20th century, it was the most important agricultural activity in the state. Of more than 20 sugar refining factories, most built between 1899 and 1920, only the Fort Morgan factory currently remains in operation. In the late 19th century, sugar beets were introduced to the Highland Lake Mead area because of the excellent growing conditions, hot, dry days, low humidity, and lots of sunshine, elements that increased the likelihood of a good sugar beet crop. The success of the sugar beet crop was one of the reasons that the town of Mead was founded in 1906. General stores, feedlots, restaurants, banks, and other establishments were built as people moved to the area. Any and all current or future owners or interest holders of the property or any portion thereof and their assignees and successors in interest should be aware that agricultural users of properties in the vicinity of the Red Barn annexation property, including but not limited to Western Sugar, should not be expected to change their long-established agricultural practices to accommodate the future development of the property. It goes on to talk about what some of those externalities or normal farming impacts might be, including noise or dust. But I think that this is a good opportunity not only to make sure that Western Sugar's concerns are adequately addressed, but also to give a bit of a history lesson, hopefully, to those folks that are going to be hopefully moving into Mead to understand how important that this particular industry was to the formation of the area. So, and I'm sorry, Jennifer, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought that for the benefit of those folks in the audience, they might want to hear a portion of what that notice states.
Thank you, Marcus. I think it was helpful. This evening, in accordance with Section 16-8-70 of the Municipal Code, you will find an annexation agreement this evening that has been signed by the applicant and is one of the items that you will consider this evening. The Planning Commission did unanimously approve Resolution 3-PC-2018 recommending to the Board of Trustees approval of the Red Barn annexation and further the establishment of the initial zoning for the property for the single-family RSF4 and RSFE. Section 16-8-40 of the Municipal Code sets forth that if the Board of Trustees finds the following, that the following is, they may proceed to annex the property. Number one is the annexation is in compliance with state statute, that an election is not required, petition is found to be signed by the owners of 100%, and that no additional terms and conditions are imposed. So with that, this evening you'll be asked to act on annexation of the property, the rezoning, and the annexation agreement, and also a resolution stating compliance for eligibility. Staff does recommend this evening that the Board of Trustees proceed to approve resolution, and I'm going to correct this in your packet also. It's 85-R-2018, excuse me, and ordinances number 879, 880, and 881. Finding the subject property eligible for annexation, annexing the subject property, establishing the initial zoning of the subject property, and approving the annexation agreement. There are recommended motions for you on the last page of the AIS before the attachments. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions?
There's little segments that say not a part, not a part, not a part. Are those like oil and gas, or what are those little weird not a part segments that are kind of, seem like they're little cutouts?
Are you talking about the maps?
No, these are the custom homes. Right. So the ones that say not a part on County Road 13, is that where the Coppels and the Lions live? But they're part of the
No, they're
annexation.
annexing in.
Their names are on there.
Trustee Harris, it might help Ms. Vecchi if you can point out what map you're looking at.
It's not really, I guess, that important. I was just trying to figure out what these little, all the little cutouts were and how they
Are
would fit
you looking
into
at
the overall.
annexation map number 1, 2? Oh, you're looking at the concept
this
plan.
pretty one, right?
Okay.
Oh, that's the concept plan.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm just, when you're looking at the concept plan and you have these weird little cutouts that say not a part, and it just kind of makes you wonder how they're going to fit in with that overall concept if they're not a part of the concept, but yet they're very, I mean, they're right there. They're just kind of weird. I don't know.
There are properties that are not within the ownership, I think is what you're talking about. Anything in white there that says not a part, those are not part of the 202 acres, except for the 2 larger lots that have been included. You're talking about a couple of the ones on the perimeter?
Yeah.
Okay, what has happened since since that map was drawn, and Andrew, if you want, if I could just go over this, I think what she's talking about is these, right?
She's just saying couples and lines are part of the annexation. Right. So those two lots, the couples and lions, are 2.5 acre lots.
Okay.
Those are part of the annexation. They're not part of the concept plan because I don't own them. So they're already have houses on them. Now, I will say that you can see the purple lots on the concept plan. Those are intended to be 1 acre custom home sites. So it'll be very compatible with those. That idea is to line the outside of the project with these large home sites, which will be a nice buffer. So,
Mr. Batson, will you please state
I
your
will.
name and...
yeah, and Andrew Batson, 12656 Waterside Lane.
And at this time, I do want to mention that Mr. Batson is available for questions also.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Mrs. Vicky. Would you like to approach the podium and tell us about your dreams?
Oh, yeah, sure.
With
Again.
this red barn?
Again, Andrew Batson. We'll certainly, town staff, I mean, this is somewhat new to me, and it's a long process with all the engineers and consultants, and the town does a fantastic job. So we've been in it for about 1.5 years, and we're getting close to having a preliminary plat submission. So we'll be coming back and sharing all that in detail. So I wouldn't want to get off in too much, detail on all of that. But certainly, as Jennifer explained, this concept of sort of honoring the heritage of Mead and having this farm. Now, this isn't a community garden that's going to turn to weeds. The concept is a professionally run farm in the center of the community to provide fresh produce to the community members, but also really provide an education and opportunity for kids in the neighborhood to learn about where their food comes from, along with lots of trails. The current concept plan shows the red barn. I wish it was already there, but we have to build it. So we'll build, that's the plan, and we're working with some local larger home builders on all of those plans. So it's coming together nicely, and we look forward to having all the details for you here shortly. So if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
I just wanted to thank you for taking the opportunity to get up and to also recognize that sugar beets and farming are very important to our community, and to recognize it and to bring it back. I think this is going to be an awesome location for a lot of people to move to. I think it's going to be just a neat place on the Front Range, so I appreciate you bringing your business to Mead. Are there any other questions or concerns? Okay.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you,
I
sir.
appreciate
Mayor
it.
Pro Tem?
Yes.
If I could, just to put it in context for anybody in the audience who hasn't been following this, this is kind of an example of how long or, how short it can take to go through an annexation. We have been working with Mr. Batson for the last 18 months. He did come before the last board with a visioning session to share what his vision was for this project, and some of you weren't on the board. And it's a pretty cool concept for Mead. And I guess just as we go through the rote, this code and that code, let's not get lost in what a wonderful project. If you do choose to annex and move forward with this project, it's going to be awesome for us. It really is a key east side piece. We've been really excited. I've been working on this since I was the town engineer, so this is finally coming to fruition. But I did want everybody to know that this just didn't drop out of the sky. We've been working so long on it that Jennifer Vecchi, our consultant, worked on it prior to our planning director starting, so she's carried it through. So I just wanted to throw that out there, just in terms of a real good partnership between a developer and town staff moving this forward.
Yeah, thank you. And I just, to reiterate how great the town staff has been to work with. I tell anybody else, Mead's the place where you want to be. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this at this time?
Excuse me.
Yes. Yes, please come to the podium, state your name and address.
Brenda Hall, 5425 County Road 32, Unit 8, Mead, Colorado. You'll have to excuse my ignorance, as I've always said, because I'm new to not only to the state but to the community. But my questions in this proposal is that I do know that there are 5 homes up there, and it was my understanding that they are not annexing in and that they're part of the Weld County. But like I said, please excuse my ignorance because I am trying to learn. The other thing I have a concern about, because I did stop and take a picture of the Western Sugar Co-op, I'm concerned about the trucks, about the mud, about the beet droppings, and if I'm asking if Mead is reimbursed too. I mean, how does that work? Because the County Road 32, County Road 13 especially, is just unbelievable when these trucks come through. I don't know if you can answer those questions to me tonight, but I want the board to be aware of it, and I'm more than happy to write a note to the town manager for explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy, would you like to answer those questions for us this evening?
I'm unaware, Mayor Pro Tem, of any agreements that are in place with the Sugar Beet Company for reimbursement for the use of our roads. I could be incorrect, though. And as far as the number of homes that are not going to be annexed into town, is 5 correct? Regardless, I would say that that's the landowner's choice to not annex into town. We don't proactively go out and make people annex in, so.
I think she was asking more about the mess that the trucks make on the roads and whether they have to be cleaned up. I don't know, maybe I'm misinterpreting what she said, but I thought she was asking about the mess that they make on the roadways and keeping them clean and the upkeep on them. I don't know.
I'm unaware of any sort of agreements that we have, or if we just clean that mess up ourselves, or.
I will speak with Ms. Hall offline on this, and I'm happy to look into it further. I would say that when you deal with agricultural vehicles have an exemption. If any of you are aware, for example, on Welker, it can be confounding when their crops are in. There's a lot of dirt that gets on the road. Unfortunately, we cannot stop that because the agricultural use predated our paving the roads and using the roads in other ways. So it's one of those things we do deal with. However, if there are safety issues, we are more than happy to address that. And I'm happy to meet with her and talk about some specifics and even go out and take a look at it to see what we're dealing with. But I guess I would argue that any of those issues wouldn't preclude the ultimate annexation of the property. It might, though, behoove us to look at some signage and some outreach to our partners in the community.
And as a right to farm community, we're very limited as to what we can do in our code. It actually precludes agricultural uses from being prosecuted in a lot of cases, so just to add on to that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I knew we were a right to farm community. So Mrs. Mickelbrink will get with Mrs. Hall on that.
But I do want to, I just, thank you very much. I'm sorry? I'm sorry?
Please address the board.
Thank you. I do want to mention about the 5 homes in Weld County. Like I said, excuse my ignorance.
Oh, no.
But I would think that if a developer comes in and asks for an annexation, how did these 5 homes get pulled out of that annexation to remain in Weld County?
Thank you very much, and we will have Mrs. Mickelbrink address that with you. And we can also put it out on our town website. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to address us at this moment? Okay, and no one from the board? We will go ahead and close our public hearing. It is 6:55. And we will ask for motions on Resolution 85R 2018, please.
I move to approve Resolution 85R, 2018, a resolution of the Town of Mead setting forth certain findings of fact and conclusions as to annexation of a certain property known as the Red Barn Annexation, numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Mrs. Broad, Trustee Broadhead, second that. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion on ordinance number 879, please?
I'll move to approve ordinance number 879, an ordinance of the Town of Mead, Colorado, annexing certain territory known as the Red Barn Annexation, numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 to the Town of Mead.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is a motion for ordinance 880, please.
I'll motion to approve ordinance number 880, an ordinance of the Town of Mead, Colorado, approving the initial zoning of property known as the Red Barn Annexation, numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, and amending the official zoning map of the Town of Mead.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion by the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is ordinance number 881.
I move to approve ordinance 881, an ordinance of the Town of Mead approving an annexation agreement, Copper Homes Red Barn Annexation, with 1332 Development LLC for certain properties located within the boundaries of the Red Barn Annexation, numbers 1 through 4.
May I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion by the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is informational items. Community Events Committee Chair, Mr. Torres, can you please approach the podium?
My name is Jerry Torres, 201 5th Street here in Mead. You should have before you my report that was submitted about our events that happened, that we've concluded for our summer events. For the summer, we're highly successful again in our concerts and our movies in the park. We raised, and I don't know the exact dollar amount, I think that's in your report, I don't remember it off the top of my head, for our Mead seniors as well as for the Mead Community Food Bank. We didn't have any issues, everything went well. As we did our meeting after the post-mortem after it to determine, we'd like to make some changes moving forward for next year, increasing the beer garden size, not to sell more beer, but simply because we had a lot of excellent food vendors and a lot of our guests wanted a place to sit down, and that's where all the tables were. So, you know, when we come before the board again with our liquor licenses to expand that, so we can put more tables and chairs inside the beer garden for people to sit down to enjoy their dinner. We didn't have any issues, like I said, everything went really well. And we're hoping for another turnout, the same as last year, or this year, for next year. So, and then now we're moving forward with our Christmas in the Park in the beginning of December. We're working in partnership with the Mead Area Chamber of Commerce. They are going to help us out with the giving trees and some other events that we have planned for it. So it will be another big event. We look forward to your participation with that. So if you have any questions at this time, comments, concerns?
I have a question, comment, or concern. When next year, when you do the look at community days, maybe, and I don't know, maybe increase, making a place for families to sit with tables and chairs so they don't have to be in the beer garden might not be a bad idea either, where they can have covered, as opposed to expanding on the beer garden, maybe expand on a area for people to take their food to eat, like over here for people with young children, where they can watch them from.
For the concerts or for the community day?
At community days.
That's not in our purview. We'll gladly take it over.
Oh, okay. I thought you
If
brought
you'd
up
like us to.
Community Days and, okay,
That's
I'm
its own
sorry.
separate entity.
Okay,
We have no
I'm
part of that
sorry
one,
about
so.
that. I misspoke. Are there any other questions? Okay.
I
Thank-
have a comment real
oh,
quick,
yeah,
sorry.
please, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to say that I think I attended most of the events,
Mhm.
and they were so well done. So kudos and
Yeah,
kudos to
absolutely.
your committee, because I know it's a lot of work, and you guys do all of it because
thank
you have
you.
so few volunteers. So if anyone wants to volunteer, since
Right.
we have such a big audience today.
Every time I come up here, we have a big crowd. I'm thinking it's me all the time. That's
So
my
we'd
arrogance.
love to have you on the events committee. They do a great job, but thank you so much for all
Yeah,
your hard
absolutely.
work.
And that was one of the things that we did take away that is definitely multi-generational on all of our events. We have little kids all the way up to our, those of you that don't know, to Lucky, our World War II veteran who's attended it. And moving forward, we've put the proposal together to the board for some even more events for next year. So hopefully we'll get those approved and they'll look amazing. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is the Finance Committee with Mrs. Denise Rademacher, please.
Denise Rademacher, Town Treasurer. I'm here in place for Scott Gilbert, who is the chair of the Finance Committee. He was not able to attend, so I'm substituting for him. So during the month of July through September, that quarter, the Finance Committee had quite a bit of activity. We sent out an audit RFP, and you all selected a new audit firm, which I will start working with in this fall, probably coming up quite quickly here. It's going to be audit season again before I know it. And we also passed a purchasing policy for the town that we had been working on, that I had been working on for quite some time. So two pretty big things that we got accomplished during the quarter. For fourth quarter, I will be going to the CGFOA conference in November, and I always come back from that conference with some ideas for the committee to expand and work on for the town of Mead. So if you have any other questions, I have some other information in the AIS if you have any questions about that.
Are there any other questions? No. Thank you. Next on the agenda is Parks, Recreation Facilities, and Open Space. Mrs. Trahan?
My name is Linda Trahern. I live at 2769 6th Street. And currently the chairperson for the Pros Committee. We are currently working with DC Design on drafting a plan for the Ames Park and Highland Lake Park area. That is ongoing, and we've been meeting with them and the community on at several times. And this last one was really a good meeting. We had a good group of people here who were quite interested in what's going to happen in those two parks. One of the things that came up in it is how soon will we be able to see plans, and then how soon afterwards would we actually see implementation of that. And that was kind of sad because the reality is it's going to take a long time. And one of the things we're currently waiting on is the land survey, the report on that. DC Planning can't do Ames Park until we know how the land survey comes out. And I understand it's done, but we have no report yet, and I don't know when that would be, when the date is that has to be in. Oh, I just got confirmation that received it last week. How nice! So we can start moving on getting those two areas completed. And we do ask for community input and an understanding that it takes money, and we're going to dream big. And so as we dream big, that money will have to be waited on until we get more homes into the community. The plan will be finished in December. That's what their timeline is. So we will have a better understanding of the timeline for implementation come February, when we start looking at grants. And we have to then start doing grants because we have a limited amount of money, as you all know. to implement those things. But I did spend last Tuesday with the second graders from Mead Elementary, all 90 of them, and going through the cemetery and the Highland Lake Church and doing their whole field trip there. And what I did hear from some of the community over there was they were a little disturbed about how bad the lake and the lake property look. They were hoping that us as a town would jump in there and get it fixed up as soon as possible, and to see that nothing's been done is hard. And I told them that we have done some things. We've cut down trees, and we've taken away some of the dangerous electricity that was hanging from lines over there. But other than that, we have been unfortunately unable to do anything. One of the problems they're having over there, as I saw this last weekend, was people are now using it as a dumping place. There was a couch and trash and other stuff there. So I ask you, I'm sure Erica and her team are looking to maintain that area, but be aware that until we get proper fencing up, this doesn't look like a really nice place. So people who don't have any scruples about that kind of thing will be using it for stuff that we don't want them to use it for. I did inform them that now it's under jurisdiction of our police department, and they don't have to call the sheriff's department anymore and wait on them, which they were happy about, because I said you'll probably get a little quicker response. So we are also looking at town-owned property to see if any of them can be incorporated into a natural open space area. We are no longer involved in the dedication of open space within the new developments. That has been taken out of our code. So we have to look for buffers in other areas, and to keep the subdivisions looking as rural as possible, we would like to look for natural places where we can incorporate the local birds, animals, and other species of wildlife that lives there, as well as maintain it for hiking places and walking. Highland Lake is one of those natural open spaces, and we are going to strive to keep it as natural as possible in order to protect all the birds and animals and fish that call it home, and yet provide a place for the community to sit there and enjoy and do their fishing and visit with the wildlife, which recently I guess we had a large cat there, and it wasn't a domestic cat. So, but we would like to keep that as an asset for the community. We are still in need of 2 more committee members, so if you know anybody who would like to be a part of this, please tell them that we would gladly have them come. In fact, we'll take more than 2. We'll put them on our committee undercover, and so, but we do absolutely need 2 members. One of the things I need to find out from you guys is why the Ames Park has been the only place looked at for the rec center. I don't know of your discussions, so I don't know if it is just a prime location, if there's some assets to having it there, but we have also been looking at the west end of Founders Park, which currently has plumbing and it has electrical to that section. So, and it is already owned, so it might be a good place, as well as Liberty Ranch, which might be a good asset for the high school to have the recreation center there, because it will provide more for that age group than for small children. So if you have an idea why Ames Park was the one that was more looked at, that would help us out a lot. If it was that it was going to be at the entrance to town and you wanted a pretty building there, or does anybody have any?
Yes, please. Thank you. So we haven't expressly looked for a site for the rec center. Right now, the reason why we're studying Ames Park and Highland Lake is doing master planning in the park. If a rec center could be built there, the preliminary look at the soils is looking kind of unlikely that it could be put there. It could be, but it would be extremely expensive for over excavation.
Right.
So we haven't done a
Okay.
exploratory, looking at all the different places where a rec center could go. It's kind of the reverse. We're looking at what works on those particular
properties.
sites.
Okay.
If a rec center were to fall in or fall out, it's sort of an exercise in what if. And
Okay.
so, but as far as locating a rec center, that hasn't been the number one task of what we're doing with this parks plan. It could be, and I'm really encouraged to hear that your committee's looking at opportunities for buffers or opportunities of where a rec center would go. I think that's awesome. But that, we didn't focus in on Ames Park or
Okay.
anywhere for it. We just are looking at what could go and what's the best use of Ames Park.
Oh, that's excellent. I know that 5 years ago when we did the little mock-up of the rec center that's up there in the office, that was looked at for Ames at the time. That's what I was hearing from the Parks Departments, or Parks Committee. And so I didn't know, like I said, we didn't want to jump onto something else if you guys had already had your heart set on Ames Park. So if not, then yay, we got some other places, because we were, like I said, we were looking at Liberty Ranch, because if we put a snack center in there along with basketball and volleyball, high school kids will come with their money, and it will be a profitable rec center. So, as well as Founders Park. So I hope that that is all right now that we are working on, and if there's any questions, I'll be happy to entertain them.
Just one thought about Liberty Ranch, because I always thought that was a nice place too. But we have water issues there that
Okay.
you would have to address with our, the town. I don't-
Okay.
You know, so you can kind of look at places. That would be a good thing at your meetings to talk about.
Well, and this would be a good thing for you to let us know. We have a hard time getting that kind of feedback, so if you would let us know, hey, don't look at this park because of these things, or don't go there, or look at maybe 3 or 4 things, other places. We would love that, because it's hard to get our discussion going in our group, because we assume that nobody's looking at it but us, and so if you are, we would take as much information from you guys as we can possibly get our hands on.
Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank
Any
you
other
so much.
questions?
Any more,
Okay.
any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Trahan. Next item on the agenda is new business. It's resolution number 86R 2018, the resolution of the town of Mead in support of ballot issue 2B.
Sorry, Town Clerk Mary Stratt. The board had requested that staff prepare a resolution in support of ballot item 2B. So we have presented that for you today for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion on resolution 86R 2018?
I'll move to approve resolution number 86R 2018, a resolution of the town of Mead, Colorado in support of ballot issue 2B.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is me. And I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I like a full house. And I also want to say that at our park meeting last week with Ames in Highland, there were only 30 people in the room, but you would have thought there were 3,000. The passion for parks and recs in this town is awesome, and I only hope that 3,000 of them show up at your meeting. But it was nice, and we got so much valuable input. Unbelievable. It was a very productive meeting, And I thank everyone that came to that meeting for showing up. It was awesome. Next item on the agenda is town trustees. Is there any?
I do. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Ms. Rodriguez, sorry, for coming forward and speaking with us and letting us know your concerns. One thing I would like to say personally, as I cannot speak for the rest of the board, nor do I want to, is that we really have thought about everything, but we also, none of the packets for being mayor and getting the signatures ever happened. I mean, that was, Ms. Strutt, you could probably tell what date that was that the packets had to be in. So we had no way of knowing that anyone on this board would want to run for mayor, but we all are members of the community and have that option. So it's always an option. Any one of us can do that, as any other citizen that's eligible. So I just hope that that puts to rest that anything was premeditated, because it definitely wasn't, because all that happened so much after. I mean, it was in late August, I think, that all that happened. So I just wanted to address that, and then thank you to Bethine for coming up and speaking. The next thing I'd like to ask the board is if anyone has a position on Amendment 74, and a lot of other municipalities and government entities and others are opposing it. So I kind of wanted to bring it up to see if we maybe have a stance as a board and would want the staff to put together a resolution opposing it as well, and stand in alliance with CML and many other municipalities about it. Any thoughts on that?
I would ask our town attorney what his thoughts are as a board, because we had discussed that at previous meetings, if we want to do that or if it's more of a personal issue. So I would ask for your
Amendment 74 is definitely not a personal issue. That is definitely something that would very much hurt the town of Mead.
But I would like to ask our town attorney his thoughts on it.
Okay, so my thoughts are similar to the resolution that you adopted just recently in support of ballot issue 2B for the 1% increase in the sales and use tax. That's an act that you're expressly permitted to take under the Fair Campaign Practices Act, and just a cautionary, and I know that your town clerk is very much aware of this, but as long as you distribute the fact that that resolution was adopted through normal customary means, and don't give it any extra billing or advertise that through paid advertising, that's fine. Similarly, you're able to take a position on any pending state ballot issue as well. So Amendment 74 is one that is, I think, very near and dear to the hearts of the Colorado Municipal League, and I know they've done a lot of work in terms of putting out background information on what is it, and I'm sure a lot of you have received those materials from CML. If any of you have not, I'm happy to forward that packet of information along, but there are a lot of municipalities across the state that are supporting a no vote on 74 by passing it in a kind of a model resolution, if you would, that CML has put together. So, in a nutshell, Amendment 74 it inserts some language into Section 15 of the Colorado Constitution, and says that any act that government might take that impacts the fair market value of property would be entitled, that property owner would be entitled to submit a claim and seek damages. So there's some concern, because I think municipalities and the state government think that takings jurisprudence is pretty well settled in this country, and that potentially would be a lot of liability for this town, or would negatively impact the town's abilities to take routine land use planning type actions. And so that would be concerning, because I think you want to be able to take regulatory steps to implement the comprehensive plan that was recently adopted. Some of the background information that CML has put out also talks about how the states of Washington and Oregon, for example, had similar constitutional or statutory amendments that impacted those states. And I think in both instances, we're talking claims that totaled in the billions of dollars that were submitted against both of those states. And I think the voters realized years later, whoops, we made a mistake, and they repealed those constitutional or statutory changes in those communities. So I think we're hoping to avoid that process here in Colorado, where we have to say, what in the world did we just do? Let's undo it.
We pass.
So that's one, and I think another one that is probably very near and dear to a lot of folks' hearts up here is Proposition 112, which talks about the mandatory minimum setbacks from developed property for oil and gas activities. But it's really up to the board. I mean, if you would like to have a resolution urging a vote one way or the other on any of these pending issues that are going to be before the state general electorate, you're more than entitled to do that, and we'll be happy to draft those. We just need some direction from the board.
Okay. I misunderstood when we talked about it like a month ago. I know Dr. Cog also came out against it as well, and for 74. But I thought maybe as a board we didn't want a voice. But if we can, then it would be up to the 6 of us to decide. Would we want to do a motion or on it and see if each one pass?
Well, I think that I think just some general direction from the board tonight to staff would be fine, and then what we can do, your next meeting is October 29th, which I know is getting pretty close in time to the election.
Right.
It's a mail ballot election, so a lot of people will have already casted their votes likely by October 29th. So we could either put it on that agenda, or if there's a strong feeling that you want to take some action this evening, then we could always amend the agenda to add a resolution, and we could, for example, adopt the CML's resolution, or we could just do it by motion, that you want it indicated in the minutes that a majority of the board urges a no vote on Amendment 74 or 112 or neither or both. I mean, it's really up to the board.
Do we want to do that?
I would like to see both of those amendments supported by the board.
Supported or this no vote?
A no
supported?
vote.
Okay, thank
A
you.
no vote, yes.
I was like, no.
Put on the agenda. Trustee Adams?
Yes.
Trustee Harris?
Fine, yeah.
So we want to put on the agenda for
I think
the
we also-
29th or?
No, I mean tonight.
No, yeah,
The
okay.
agenda tonight. Put it on tonight, because by the 29th, everything's come and gone, and it's not. I would think if we're going to do it, we do it tonight.
Well, and it might be beneficial too, if you're considering taking some action tonight, it might be beneficial just if there's any members of the public that are here that have an opinion one way or the other, it might be good to hear from your constituents as well. You might want to open it up for public comment.
Okay. We'll open it up for public comment right now on anyone that would like to come to the podium and state their name and address and reference to either Amendment 112 or Amendment 74 if you're in favor or not in favor with a yes or a no vote. And the time is 7:24. So if no one's coming to the podium, we will go ahead and, would you like to do the motion to have it reflect on this agenda, the agenda and the minutes for this evening?
Do we just want a motion
Yeah.
saying that we are in opposition of it?
Well, or just a motion to direct staff to draft a short resolution urging a no vote on Amendment 74 and Proposition 112, I think, and then If that motion is seconded and that motion is successful, then we can, or let me take it, I probably can draft a short resolution memorializing that you're urging a no vote on those, and then that may be circulated for signature following the meeting tonight. But I do think that my preference would be to have both of those set forth in a separate resolution. So they would be
Two separate motions.
Resolution 87, Resolution 87 for Amendment 74, and Resolution 88 for Proposition 112. But you don't, again, it's up to you whether you want to take action on one or both or neither.
Do you want to ask everyone if they
What
agree
they
with
all said.
112 so as it,
Are you in 112, is Mr. Adams, Trustee Adams, is that, would you like that also motioned this evening as well? Sure. And Trustee Harris, same?
Sure.
And?
Yes.
And I said yes, and yes.
yes. So I move to ask staff to draft a resolution number 87 showing the town of Mead in opposition of Amendment 74.
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then,
I move to approve resolution, or asking staff to draft a resolution number 88 showing the town of Mead in opposition of Proposition 112.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. We'll give that to Trustee Adams. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any other items that the trustees want to address this evening? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
If I may?
Yes, please.
Sorry, I got skipped over because I didn't have my usual report, because as you know, I was supposed to be in Spain. However, I wrecked my knee, so here I am. I just have a couple things that I'd like to bring up. First of all, in response to Mrs. Trahern and the Pros Committee in her report, she alluded to going for grants in the next year. I just wanted to point out that we are currently looking for a communications director. One of the tasks of that communications director is going to be grant writing and most importantly, grant getting. One, like working for GOCO grants. This is so important that once we finish this parks plan, that we have somebody follow up immediately and start working on that. So I just wanted to put a plug in for that position, and one of the reasons that we're looking for the position. I also wanted to point out on October 25th is the cities and county dinner. 2 of you have reserved going. Please let Mary or me know if you're interested in going. That's a really fun time. So we'd like to see you there. And then finally, there was some input on sales and use tax, and I asked our treasurer to put together a little PowerPoint for all of you to look at that just talks about some scenarios of what exactly the increase of sales. Sorry, but this is just... So could we ask Denise?
We can find the power. I did, Town Treasurer Denise Rademacher, I put together quickly this afternoon, based on some emails that had been sent my way, just some scenarios of sales and use tax, based on if somebody purchased fuel, or somebody purchased liquor, or somebody ate dinner somewhere, or what have you. And so instead of just going through the scenarios, I tried to make it a little bit more educational. I will put out there right now, I am not the expert on sales and use tax. I do rely on the state because we are a state collected. We don't collect the sales tax ourselves. And today the state was closed because of the holiday, so I couldn't pick their brain on any of this before I prepared it. But this is what I prepared. And let's see if it's going to go
back and forward.
back. Whoa. Let's see. Your handouts are probably pretty small, but I can also send this PowerPoint to you all tomorrow. As I said, I finished this tonight about 4:30 before the meeting. So it was kind of flying. Okay, so let's see what happens here. It's kind of let me go back. If I go back, it's going to take me to, there we go.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so a lot of the information, I took it from Form DR 10002, which can be found on the Department of Revenue's site. And that form is a publication which is updated every year, January and July. And it shows the sales and use tax for all of the state-collected cities and counties in the state. So if you see that, you'll see the town of Mead, you'll see what we exempt. The exemptions below are the ones that we exempt specifically, which would be food for home consumption, machinery and machine tools, gas, electricity for residential use, and renewable energy components. The DR 1002 also shows what items are subject to the use tax, and it also gives the various rates for both of those taxes for all the different state-collected entities in the state. One of the scenarios I was asked is if you went and purchased a piece of equipment at the local auction, how much would you pay under our current tax rate versus the proposed 3%? It's kind of a loaded question. There's a lot of things that go into something like that. The scenario is, well, do you take possession of it there at the auction? Do you have it delivered to some place that is within the jurisdiction of the town of Mead and the boundaries of the town of Mead? Or is it delivered to somewhere outside of the town of Mead? So all of those things play into whether or not we collect anything on a sales. Also, what is the use of that piece of machinery? Is it used mostly for manufacturing? Because that would be exempt. If it's a piece of farm equipment, that is not exempt. So there's all kinds of different, I can't say just based on if it's this, would we collect tax? Well, I don't know. I can make up assumptions, but those are all things that factor into whether or not we collect tax on anything. Another scenario was $2,000 worth of machinery. Again, if it's farm machinery, yes, we could collect the 2% tax on that, 3% proposed if it passes. But again, if it's a piece of machinery that's used mostly for manufacturing, then no. So it's based on the use of the machinery, where you take possession of it, if it's delivered. There's a whole bunch of different. It's not as simple and cut and dry as you may think it is sometimes. And then I also put in there the FYI for for your information. A lot of this stuff, there's FYIs on the Department of Revenue site, which goes into detail on all of the different types of items and whether they are taxable or not. And then another scenario I was asked about is if you had a service performed in the town of Mead, whether that be a haircut or say you go to the local veterinarian and you get a $200 bill from your local vet. Well, again, if you're paying just for services that veterinarian provides, services typically are not taxable. If you purchase pet supplies and food and things like that, those types of things could be taxable. So again, just based on the scenarios given, you can have all kinds of assumptions to determine whether or not an item is taxable or not, and transaction is taxable or not. Tangible personal property, I just threw that in there so you have an idea of what people are talking about. It's basically any goods, wares, merchandise, products that can be exchanged and possessed. And it does not apply to real property, such as land and buildings. Scenario I was given was, okay, so you go and you buy a refrigerator from a local appliance dealer. Absolutely, that's a tangible piece of personal property that would be subject to the local tax. Food and alcohol, this one gets a little more complicated. I actually called our local liquor store, Mead Liquors, because at one point I was reading that liquor is treated as an excise tax. So this would have been a question I could have asked the state, but they weren't open. And when I spoke to the owner or whomever answered the phone at Mead Liquors, they said they charge 4.9%, which means they're collecting the 2% for the town and the 2.9% for the state. Now, you all know if you go to a local restaurant and you sit down and eat dinner, that is taxable. You're going to get tax on your bill for that. The other scenario I was given is if you go to a local convenience store, again, you would pay on that. And in general, that top part I said, food sold for home consumption is exempt. Okay, so you go to the grocery store and you buy things like that. But I think localities can tax food. I think it's up to the specific locality. I know they're dealing with that in Longmont right now, of whether or not to tax food for home consumption. And there's an example, meals and prepared snacks at restaurants, convenience stores, concession stands are subject to sales tax. And then again, there's another FYI out there, taxable and tax-exempt food, sales of food and related items that you can read to your pleasure on that one too. Another one I was asked was, you go to the gas station and you buy $20 worth of gas. You wouldn't pay any sales tax because the tax that's collected from gasoline is an excise tax. And what you currently would be paying if it's gasoline, for example, you're paying 22 cents a gallon to the state of Colorado in the form of an excise tax for that fuel. And that's usually built already into the price. So if you ever see your ticket when you're leaving the fuel station, you're not going to see, you got charged this amount of tax. It's built already into the price. So, motor vehicle sales. A lot of times the sales of motor vehicles are referred to as a use tax. So if you look at that DR 1002 under use tax, you'll see that use tax usually applies to motor vehicles and building materials. So in particular, there was an example that somebody had put online of if you buy a $40,000 car, it's going to cost $1,200 more. Well, it's going to cost $1,200 at 3%, but it's not $1,200 more. It's just simply $400 more. You would have paid, $800 at the 2% rate anyway. So it's not an additional $1,200. It's an increase of $400. So just keep that in mind. And I think that's about it. That's all I had time to get to. And again, if you have any other specific questions, just let me know. And if I don't know the answer, I can pick the brain of Luann Pyatt, who's our liaison at the Department of Revenue, when they're not on holiday like today. So if anybody has any questions, I can attempt to answer them. Otherwise, I did give to you also a nifty little handout that's, you can find a lot of information from the Department of Revenue site. This one gives a lot of good information of how sales tax is collected, what is taxed, and all that information. And that's a lot of what I use between this and the DR 1002 is how I prepared a lot of that information. And again, I can send that PowerPoint so you can read it better. It is kind of small. I can send that out to you all tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Rademacher. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And you, since you're here and not in Spain, you're done with your minutes. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for showing up this evening. And this goes on.